Why can something as humble as red cabbage change the way we care for our bodies so much? Why do so many people look for expensive supplements, industrial probiotic drinks, and complicated solutions, when a natural aid for digestion can be hidden in a simple fermented vegetable? And if gut health really starts with what we eat every day, why does almost no one talk about ancient, simple, and powerful recipes like this one? Today we are going to prepare fermented red cabbage with apple and pink salt, a simple mixture full of flavor and designed to feed those good bacteria that work silently inside us. Stay until the end, because the smallest detail can make the difference between a perfect fermentation and a ruined jar. Fermented red cabbage is, for me, one of those foods that seem too simple to be so special. Not only does it have a deep, tangy, and slightly sweet flavor when prepared well, but it also becomes a kind of natural treasure for the body. It is a humble, homemade recipe, but with a strength that we often forget amidst so many modern products. The best part is that you don't need expensive machines, complicated knowledge, or hard-to-find ingredients. We only need a red cabbage, an apple, a little pink salt, and time. The main idea is to let nature do its work. The cabbage, upon coming into contact with the salt, begins to release its own juices. That liquid will become the natural brine where fermentation occurs. The apple, for its part, provides natural sugars that help create an ideal environment for beneficial bacteria to thrive. And that combination, when left to rest for several days, slowly transforms into a living, tangy, crunchy food full of character. To start, we will use a medium-sized red cabbage. A piece of approximately 3 pounds, or about 1.5 kilograms, is ideal, although it's perfectly fine if it's a little larger or smaller. That is precisely one of the beauties of natural fermentation. It does not demand perfect precision. It is flexible, simple, and very forgiving. The important thing is to respect the process, maintain cleanliness, and understand why each step counts. Now we are going to prepare the red cabbage carefully, because this first step is more important than it seems. Often when someone sees a fermentation recipe, they think everything depends on rare ingredients or exact measurements. But in reality, the key here is to respect the raw material and not waste the parts that can also help the process. The red cabbage we are going to use should be firm, fresh, and have that intense purple color that already tells us there is something special inside. The first thing we will do is cut the cabbage in half. Upon opening it, we will see a harder, compact, and white part in the center, the core of the cabbage. Normally, many people cut it out and throw it straight into the trash, as if it were useless. But in this recipe, we are not going to do that. We are going to save that core because later on it will play an important role in the fermentation. Why waste a part that can feed the good bacteria? Why take away something from the recipe that can make it more complete? After removing that hard core, we start cutting the cabbage into thin strips. The strips don't all have to be perfect. In fact, home fermentation has something very beautiful about it. It doesn't require a factory-made appearance. It can be rustic, natural, made by hand, just like it used to be done. The important thing is that the cabbage is thin enough so that the salt can act well on it and help it release its own liquid. As we cut, we place all the shredded or finely chopped cabbage into a large bowl. It is better to use a wide container because later we will need space to mix, press, and massage the cabbage comfortably. This gesture seems simple, but it prepares everything that will come next. The cabbage is about to go from being a common vegetable to becoming a fermented, living food full of flavor. And here appears one of the great advantages of this recipe. We don't need to add water at the beginning, nor prepare a separate brine, nor rely on complicated equipment. The cabbage itself will create the liquid it needs to ferment. We just have to give it the right conditions. Therefore, before thinking about the jar, the weight, or the final flavor, we must prepare this base well. Because if the base is well made, the whole process will have a much better chance of turning out perfectly. Before continuing with the recipe, it is worth stopping for a moment and looking at the red cabbage with different eyes. Because we often see it as just another vegetable, something that is cut, mixed, and served as a side dish. But behind that intense purple color, there is an important difference compared to green cabbage. And that difference is not only in the flavor or appearance, but also in the compounds it contains. Red cabbage stands out because it has a much higher amount of vitamin A compared to green cabbage. According to the explanation included in the original content, it can provide up to 10 times more vitamin A. And that already gives us a first clue. We are not talking about a simple color variation, but a vegetable with a very interesting nutritional composition. But the true strength of red cabbage lies in those natural pigments that give it its deep tone, anthocyanins. Anthocyanins are phytonutrients that act as powerful antioxidants. The original content mentions that they are linked to anti-inflammatory properties, the reduction of damage caused by free radicals, and potential support against processes associated with cancer. Therefore, when we look at a red cabbage, we shouldn't just see it as a pretty ingredient to add color to a dish. We should see it as a vegetable loaded with natural compounds that work in a silent, yet highly valuable way. Another important compound is also mentioned, sinigrin. Both red and green cabbage contain this sulfur-based phytonutrient, and according to the explanation in the original content, it is also linked to anti-cancer properties. Then an interesting question arises. If such a common vegetable can contain such potent compounds, why do we so often leave it forgotten in the supermarket or the fridge? But there is something else. One of the most notable benefits of cabbage, according to the original explanation, has to do with issues like ulcers and gastritis. Its relationship with blood sugar support and estrogen balance is also mentioned. In other words, this recipe is not just about preparing something tasty, it is about recovering a simple way of eating living, natural foods that are useful for the body. And when that red cabbage is fermented, the interest becomes even greater. Because we are no longer talking solely about the raw vegetable, but about a food slowly transformed by beneficial bacteria. That is the reason why this recipe deserves patience. It's not about rushing, it's about allowing each ingredient to fulfill its function, from the cabbage to the apple, from the core we saved to the salt we will add later. Now it's time to add the apple, and this detail changes much more than it seems. The apple is not here just to add a sweet touch or to make the mixture taste more pleasant. Its role is much more important within the fermentation. The apple provides natural sugars, and those sugars create an ideal environment for beneficial bacteria to grow and work better. In other words, the apple helps feed that small living world that is forming inside the jar. And here a question arises that is worth asking. If a simple apple can help make the fermentation more active, tastier, and more balanced, why not take advantage of it? Sometimes the simplest ingredients are the ones that make a homemade recipe go from being good to being truly special. In this preparation, the apple softens the flavor of the cabbage, provides a slightly sweet background, and makes the final result much more pleasant to eat. We are also going to retrieve the cabbage core that we had set aside earlier. That hard part that many people throw away without thinking contains elements that serve as food for the good bacteria. The original content explains that these cores are loaded with prebiotics, and prebiotics are exactly what those beneficial bacteria need to thrive. That's why we don't waste it. We use it, we incorporate it into the mixture, and let it fulfill its function. To save time, we can use a grater and grate both the cabbage core and the apple. This way, they integrate better with the red cabbage strips and mix more evenly. But you have to be careful here. Grating hard or small ingredients can be dangerous if done in a hurry. The original content even mentions that the person cut their finger the last time they used the grater. Therefore, if you are going to do it at home, it is advisable to be patient, hold the ingredients firmly, and if possible, use protective gloves. If you are going to prepare a large amount, the most convenient thing is to use a food processor. Not only does it save time, but it also prevents hand fatigue and reduces the risk of accidents. In a few seconds, you can have the apple and the cabbage core ready to mix with the rest. The idea is not to complicate the recipe, but to make it practical and safe. Once grated, we add the apple and the cores to the bowl where we already have the chopped red cabbage. Then we mix everything gently, making sure the ingredients are distributed evenly. At this point, the bowl begins to show a beautiful mix of colors: the intense purple of the cabbage, the light tone of the apple, and the firmer texture of the grated core. But a key ingredient is still missing, one that will trigger the most important change. That ingredient is salt. In a moment, we will add 2 teaspoons of pink salt. And although it may seem like a small thing, this step will be the real start of the fermentation, because salt doesn't just add flavor. Salt draws the water out of the cabbage, helps create the natural brine, and prepares the environment where fermentation can develop safely. Without this step, the recipe would not have the same strength or the same natural protection. Now we enter one of the most important parts of the whole recipe, dry salting. We are not going to prepare a separate brine or pour salt water over the vegetables. Here the salt is sprinkled directly over the red cabbage, the apple, and the grated core, and from that moment the change begins. We add 2 teaspoons of pink salt and mix well. It seems like a small gesture, but the salt begins to draw out the moisture that the cabbage holds inside. Little by little, the leaves soften and release their own juices. That liquid will be the natural brine that will allow the mixture to ferment without added preservatives. Why do it this way? Because when the cabbage creates its own brine, the flavor is more concentrated and the texture remains more vibrant. The salt doesn't just season, it awakens the water hidden inside the vegetable and prepares the environment where the beneficial bacteria will be able to work. After adding the salt, we let the bowl rest for 20 to 30 minutes. It is best not to rush. During that time, the cabbage begins to lose its stiffness, becomes more flexible, and the bottom of the container starts to show the first signs of liquid. That is where the recipe begins to transform. We must also be careful with the type of salt. It is best to avoid common table salt because it is usually highly processed and iodized. In this preparation, pink salt is preferred as it is pure and additive-free so as not to disturb the good bacteria we want to feed. Then comes the most physical step. With clean hands, we squeeze, press, and massage the cabbage vigorously. At first it seems dry, but every movement helps break down its fibers. The mixture becomes shiny, moist, and softer. At the bottom appears that brine that will protect everything during fermentation. If there is not enough liquid, the cabbage will not be well covered in the jar, and that can cause mold. That is why this step should not be done halfway. After massaging for a few minutes, we let it rest again for about 30 minutes so that more juice comes out. When the cabbage is soft, moist, and has visible brine, we know it is ready to go into the jar. That simple detail will determine the safety, flavor, and final texture. Now that the cabbage has released its natural brine, it is time to transfer it to the jar. But before doing so, we must ensure everything is clean. While the mixture rests, we can sterilize the jars. A simple way is to submerge them in boiling water and then let them air dry completely. It is best not to dry them with a towel, as any small impurity can affect the fermentation. Once the jar is clean and dry, we start adding the cabbage little by little. It is not enough to simply place it inside. It must be pressed down firmly, layer by layer, so that it is tightly packed and completely covered by the brine. This step is crucial. If any part of the cabbage is exposed to the air, mold can develop and ruin all the hard work. The tighter the mixture is packed, the better the result. The final texture will be crunchier, and the fermentation will be more stable. Over the next few days, we will see small bubbles rising to the surface. This means the fermentation is active. From time to time, we can carefully open the jar to release the buildup pressure and then close it again. Now all that is left is to wait. We leave the jar in a cool, dry place at around 70 degrees Fahrenheit for 7 to 14 days. The exact time will depend on your preferred level of acidity. The longer it ferments, the more intense the flavor will be. This wait may seem long, but it is precisely when the cabbage transforms into a living food for digestion. When the fermentation is ready, we can serve a small amount in a bowl. The original content also shows a cabbage that is only 2 days old, not yet fully fermented, just to demonstrate how the process progresses. For batches finished after about a week, a little honey can be added. The honey helps balance the acidity and leaves a smoother, more pleasant flavor. Additionally, raw honey contains beneficial enzymes that complement the fermentation well. But there is an important warning. Since honey contains natural sugars, it can significantly accelerate the fermentation. Therefore, after mixing it in, the jar must be immediately stored in the refrigerator. We also need to make sure the brine level doesn't drop too low. If it does, it is best to press the cabbage down to keep it covered. And we must always use clean, dry, and well-maintained utensils. A minor oversight can ruin all the effort put in at home.